Good morning, it's JJ. Week number 3 of contracts. Yay! This week we're going to be doing disclosures, but I'm going to do a little advertisement, political stuff prior to. We were talking about rental properties and investment properties and things like that, and the city of Cape Coral has taken it upon itself to try and really hurt the investors and the realtors who sell investment properties
and the renters
and the renter, and they're going after the renters. So I don't know if you saw the email that we sent out, but the city of Cape Coral has decided instead of their one-time $35 registration fee, they want to now change it to an annual fee of $600 per property per rental. Ouch, 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 ouch. Then it gets even more communistic, and I'm going to use that word, is if someone hasn't complied with that, the police will be given the legal right to go knock on the door and remove whoever is in the house until the compliance is done. That's going to be, number one, if it even makes it through Cape Coral, it's going to be challenged legally. But in the meantime, yeah, and I put it out on the team page. You got emails, all of the emails for every single council person and the mayor. Please email them. Kevin Besserer from the Realtor Association even created a little mini letter, so you don't even have to think. You can just hit it out there. I sent it out. I'm getting responses from them. So we put enough pressure on them and get loud enough. We'll see where that happens. They pulled it. Yes, they
right after everything started going
they stuck it in there thinking nobody was going to pay attention. It got caught. They pulled it off the meeting, and now it's scheduled for next week. So June 4th. So on June 4th at 5 p.m., every realtor, every owner of rental properties, we want bodies there. Let's be respectful. Let's show the realtor pride and all that, but we have to protect private property rights. That's what we do as realtors. So let's show what we can do.
Well,
and our PR guy will get a love it.
The point is, the city's like a rock and a hard place. They spent all this money and they have all these projects going on that are very, very costly. And they got, how many projects they got at one time?
I mean, I always taught that when you only spend what you have.
Well,
we're trying.
They don't. It's not their money.
Yes. So no, it's your money.
You had
So
access to money that was yours. You probably spend it.
There you go. And my job is to keep your money in your pocket and not get sued. So look at all these disclosures. Oh my God, is it not scary? The world is getting more and more litigious, and they want to know more and more and more and more. And with social media, they can find out more and more and more. So your job is to make sure everybody gets taken care of, right? Believe it or not, almost everything starts with the sellers. And whether you're on the buying side or the seller's side, it always comes down to that. We've created a couple of forms as well that we want you to use. This is the seller's net sheet. I'm going to call it a disclosure because you want your customer to know the costs that are involved in selling property. It's all about transparency. This is a form we've made up, and you can use it so that there's more to selling than just the cost of the compensation / commission, right? There's doc stamps in the state of Florida. There's intangible tax. They might have liens and things like that. Remember the PACE loan? All of that? That can affect their bottom line. If they owe $40,000 and you say, oh, we're going to walk away, we're going to sell this house, and you're going to walk away with $300,000, and then all of a sudden they find out they're losing $40,000. They're going to be very upset with you. And maybe the numbers won't work when they go to accept an offer and close. So if you do this in the beginning when you list, it's a really good idea. And then just every time you get an offer, you redo it. And this often works with the buyers too. If they're trying to figure out what kind of a number they can do for the sellers, well, this is what it's going to cost the seller. Maybe we could take some of these costs onto our side, etc. That's a really, really cool tool. And 95% of the realtors out there do not use that. They don't tell their sellers what it's actually going to cost them other than their commission / compensation. So this will instantly make you look more professional. Everybody's using it, yeah? You're using it.
It's $400 now, right?
It's $400 for the brokerage fee.
Yeah.
Yes. And you can charge more if you'd like.
I actually created a spreadsheet that not only includes kind of a listing cost, but I do some kind of comparatives.
Mhm.
And if you look at the percentage of what, the sold to list price is, I factor those in, and what I can do is actually show them a range of what they can expect offers are coming in at current conditions, and they seem to like that, so.
It's cool. And if you're not as smart as Tim, you can call your title company, and they'll come up with a sheet. When you're in the listing table, your idea is to make the bottom look as good as possible. So don't do the prorations on property taxes. Just put, oh, it's a check mark. Remind them they've got to pay it. Same thing with the mortgage.
Most of the title companies have like a system, then it kind of looks good because it has
Yeah.
the title company's name on it, not me.
Yeah, it looks good.
I'm not in charge of the money.
And it depends on your customer. Sometimes when you're a listing presentation, if you're doing it manually, I mean, it really is kind of cool. Makes you look like you know what you're doing, and they get involved in it. I do like them to sign it just so that you know that they looked at it. It's not a legal form, but it's just a cool thing. And we've been talking ad nauseum, flood disclosures. They are for residential properties, whether they're vacant or occupied. It also includes, when I say residential, that's anything that a person can live in. So it could be a duplex, it could be a triplex, anything that they live in. That is required by the seller, and it's federal state law, that the seller provide this. And it says real clearly, at or before the time the sales contract is entered. So as a listing agent, do it in your listing packet, upload it into MLS, and then you've done your due diligence. And you don't have to worry about it when you get the sales contract. Then it'll just make everything really easy. It's a super easy form. All they have to do is tell whether they filed a claim. That's basically all it really has.
Yeah, now if they don't have flood insurance, obviously didn't file a claim, but it flooded anyway.
Well, they could receive federal assistance, and that's what we have to disclose to the customer.
No, that's
No,
what you should ask.
that comes under another form.
Yeah, it should be all on one thing.
Yeah.
Is that the form for, I remember one time I have lots that are in title search, and you made me do a flood form for my lots.
Mm-hmm.
And is that this one here?
Yes, this is it.
All right.
This is the flood disclosure. Yeah. The other part that Jeanette was talking about was had it flooded before.
Right.
That's in the seller's property disclosures, which we have as well. And I will hand those
So
to
this one here applies to vacant lots
and occupied
lots
and
that
any
are approved.
yes,
Okay.
exactly. And that is a state law.
Okay.
So if you have the buyer and they haven't provided it, that's the first thing you're going to do is ask for it, because it is required by law to do that. Same thing with lead paint. Lead paint is a federal law. It's a health hazard, and it's one of those big disclosure things. And did you know there's 2 forms? Most agents don't know that there's a second form.
For lead paint?
Mm-hmm. This is your list. This is actually a listing form. It just tells them that they're required to tell people about lead-based paint and what the law is, and that they have to disclose to the buyer and all that. It's a big 2-page form. Huge. 78. If the home is built in 78, don't use the lead-based paint disclosure. Pre-78. Because once you do 78, then they're going to say, well, why didn't you do it on the home that was in 79, 80, 81? And then you're going down a rabbit hole. So pre-78 only. But this you're supposed to give to the seller, and they're supposed to tell you what they know, and they're supposed to sign it. We will not beat you up if we don't get these, but it is a nice idea to use.
On this flood one, I wouldn't even have thought about the sustained period of standing water.
Mm-hmm.
We get the rainy season that changes the whole complexion of the land sometimes.
Well, sustained would be like if you've ever driven down the roads and you've seen the swale areas just full of water forever and ever and ever. That's more what they're talking about, more than a couple of days. Yeah. I'm not exactly sure what they would call that, but if it's been there for if it's sitting there like a week or 2.
Well, I know a guy named Bob Wolf that turns it into Wolf's water branch in the spring because he was near a mountain.
Well, there you go.
But this is just about FEMA.
That's just
This
FEMA.
is just
That's
about
specifically FEMA.
doesn't matter what is
Yeah.
actually happening on it.
That's just FEMA, just cover our butts. So this is actually the lead-based paint disclosure. That we know about. And that's what the seller has to fill out. You're also required to sign it and initial it on there. I did not make copies of the lead-based paint disclosure brochure. You know, you've all seen it, you know it. You don't have to print it out and give it to your customers. You can just email the whole brochure over. But federal law requires that you give the buyer the disclosure booklet as well as have them sign that they've received the booklet. And if the seller doesn't know if there's lead-based paint, please just put don't know. I mean, the odds are if the house was built before 78, it's got lead paint in there somewhere. And we usually tell the buyers that they can have a lead-based paint testing done. A lot of older buildings, people want them done to see if it's been cleaned up and stuff. But I don't have any kids that will raise a window and eat the paint. Or you've got to ingest it. It's got to get in your body somehow. So if you have it, this could make a difference if you're going to remodel. And older houses like off McGregor and historic things, once they start destroying, then you've got to start taking measures to protect your health. When you start tearing down walls, or they're knocking down Broadway Palm Dinner Theater right now, that whole, not the theater itself, but the whole shopping center. I'm sure there's lead-based paint in there somewhere. It was built in the 70s. So it's probably got lead paint in that mess that's in there. So that's that. Does anybody have any questions or comments or horror stories or fun stories to talk about?
Yesterday I found out somebody took my social security number and rented an apartment in Yonkers.
Oh, did it have lead paint in it?
Might have. I was like, I couldn't even sleep all night thinking. I found out the owner's name. I found out the people who are living there.
Oh, wow. Good golly.
You have to lock it all down.
I already did. That's what I don't understand.
Really?
Maybe because it was just a lease
Yeah.
and just a credit, background search, it didn't come up.
I don't know.
Because it's in the black web for like 3 years.
Everybody can get your social if they really, really, really want it. You might have even given it by mistake sometimes, getting partway through a scam email, and all of a sudden you go, oh crap, that's spam, and you delete it, and you're thinking that they didn't capture it while you're filling the form out. Surprise! They did. Okay.
So what do they need a social security number for? Are they going to give you a job?
I don't know. Okay, HOAs and communities, right? What's the law on that?
There's a lot of them. Which one?
And what do you got to do? What do you got to disclose?
Everything.
This is the fun part about Florida law, and realtors have lobbied and stuff. Condos, we have to disclose that they have to join a condo association, and here's their fees, and then the buyer gets protected. They get 3 days to review all the financials, all the rules, all the regs, and all that, and they can cancel if they don't like them. Homeowners associations don't have to do anything other than disclose that you have to join an association. The trick is you have to give them this sometime before closing, right? And if you fail, and that's the part that most realtors don't pay attention to, and are sloppy realtors who don't put it in the MLS, all these disclosures, right? It says right on there, and it's in big, bold print. This contract is voidable by the buyer by delivering blah, 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 written notice of the buyer's intent to cancel within 3 days after receipt of the disclosure summary or prior to closing, whichever occurs first. That's if this is not given to the buyer. It's not the buyer's agent's responsibility. It's the seller's or the seller's agent's responsibility to get it to the selling agent, to the buyer. If they don't, the buyer can walk. They can go all the way to closing table and go, you didn't disclose, I want out. And the seller has no recourse, no legal recourse. So this form does have some teeth to it, but we just get sloppy sometimes and forget about it. So listing agent, fill it out right away, put it in the MLS, make sure that you get it back from the selling agent. If you're the selling agent, make sure you ask for it. I would ask for it because I want my deal to close and I want my money, you know, and we have a responsibility to our customer to make sure that they get what they want, which is a condo
What I find is
or a homeowner.
most of the selling agents don't publish these things on the MLS. So I actually call them first, and usually I don't get a response. And then I call the association management company directly.
Mhm.
I say, I need your rules and regs, budget, articles of incorporation, and declarations. Make sure I have all that. Then I get it, and I provide it to my buyers in
Yeah.
advance. Even if we're pre-contract.
Yeah,
You
it's
read
there.
the stuff, because you may not want to join if you find out there's certain rules and regs in there that says you only can have one dog and it's got to be 40 pounds or less.
Yeah.
Crazy, right?
And you can, if you think that your customer wants to have that extra protection of reviewing the financials and all of that, you can take the wording on the condo disclosure addendum and put in there and give the buyer that 3 days to review all of that from the seller. So you can use that same wording, just copy that paragraph over. Don't recreate the wheel, just copy the wording. And that gives the buyer a little bit extra protection because the homeowners don't have to do that to the buyers. And it can be a very substantial number nowadays. The more amenities there are in the homeowners associations. And if you have a condo that has a homeowners association, that has a masters association, there's all of these layers of fees and costs. And the only people who are required to really give you everything to review are the condo portion of it. So I would do that if I were doing the homeowners association. So now your disclosure has now turned into an addendum. I know. Are we having fun yet?
I went on to a couple of agents who have decided that they only need to use the HOA disclosure. They don't have to use the condo disclosure because there's a place to write more than one thing. So they've determined that this is the only form that they need, and I call BS.
That would be correct.
And then they tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. So I just wanted to just confirm that indeed, if
Yes.
it's a condo association and a HOA, they need both.
They
And
really,
they can write as much crap on here as they want.
they can put as much crap on there as they want.
Or they don't know whether they are an HOA or condo. I've had the small units are like that before.
Yeah, well, and it says if it's mandatory or not mandatory, because there are a few little communities where it's not mandatory. Like Whiskey Creek is not a mandatory homeowners association. But it's, again, the more you can disclose to your customer, the more transparent, the more professional you look, the less chance you are of getting sued, and the better chance you have of getting a closing and then getting referrals from it. You know.
And a lot of title companies will help with those questions too.
Yeah, title companies will be very helpful, and there are so many association management companies that are operating out of their back room of their houses and stuff, that it's very difficult sometimes to get information from them. Or you call them and you leave a message, and maybe they'll call you back in 3 days, or they're not even on this coast. They're somewhere in another state even doing the association management. It's really frustrating. So the more preemptive striking, like Tim's getting the information prior to, then you don't have the buyers getting frustrated, say, oh my God, now I can't buy it, and they get discouraged. They go home on the plane and they don't buy anything, and poof, you're out of luck.
Our development's got the master and then 32 HOAs to deal with.
Ooh.
And they're lax at times. When I was buying into the places, I ran into stuff with that, trying to get things for me as a buyer to look at so I could make a decision. But yeah, but many management associations we've experienced there, not very good. So.
It's really bad when the management doesn't understand the difference between the two different things.
And that's why we have value as a realtor. And that's some of the stuff when you're doing your interviewing and stuff, is you can talk about some of these horror stories and some of the things that have to be done. Like Candy was saying the other day, you say, oh no, we don't have to give you the condo docs. Nah, it doesn't apply. Your rights as a buyer don't count legally, So we can show how much more important we are and how much they really do need us, especially since we're asking our customers to pay us now. There will come a time, and we've seen some of it, where the sellers are just not going to pay anymore, and you're going to have to get your money from the buyer. So start thinking about packaging yourself up and getting ready to be a buyer's agent. You know, your buyer's consultation is going to be super important. And all these disclosures, that scares the bejesus out of them. Oh my gosh, all this stuff that could happen, you know, yeah, and I'm here to guide you through it, and they're going to love it. And we were talking before, Barbara's talking about the flood disclosures and all of that. That's the main thing. The state of Florida requires, it's federal law actually, that if there is a significant defect, that the sellers have to disclose upfront. If it's not readily apparent, you know, if you're in the flight path of O'Hare Airport, that's kind of readily apparent.
Or discovered during inspection.
Or just, yeah. So they have to disclose, but it doesn't say that it has to be disclosed in writing. And you'll see sometimes sellers who have inherited the property, they don't know what's wrong with the property. They don't want to do anything. They're like, I don't know. Well, those famous I don't knows can be reduced to writing, which will protect them. So if you're the listing agent, yes, my job is to offer you the best protection that I can. And same thing for the customers. Believe it or not, there is a vacant land disclosure. It's real simple. I don't know if you've ever looked at it. You can or cannot fill it out. Again, it's an extra layer of professionalism. And depending on the type of lot, sometimes it's a good thing. It asks about surveys. It asks about, do they know if they've ever had any flooding, like standing water, like you're talking about.
Environment-related matters too, maybe, and on location. Like if there's something in the soil or
if they've had anything done that they know of. It also talks about usage.
yeah.
And it's amazing how many sellers don't know what their land is zoned or used for. And we actually had that happen in the city of Cape Coral. The person bought it. It was zoned in the MLS. It was zoned on LIPA as residential property. Well, somewhere between the time that buyer bought it and the buyer sold it, it got changed to commercial. It didn't catch up at LIPA, but it was commercial. And the seller thought the use was still residential.
Would that have been found out of the permitting division?
That's when they found out. They found out when the buyer already bought it, closed, went to go to permitting, and they found out that they couldn't build a house on it. So now the sale gets negated, buyer gets his money back, agent has to bring back the commission, seller's unhappy, and who knows what can happen after that, you know. So
Blame the realtor, so you should have known.
you should have known. And I actually had to get involved, and I had to call the city of Cape Coral, and that's how I found out it was zoned commercial. And they said, well, you can't rely upon LIPA. You're going to have to call us every time. And I'm like, we're going to call every time to sell a freaking lot in Cape Coral? So this little vacant land is,
Changes.
that's what we were just talking about, yeah.
I had one
So,
change in the middle of the deal.
yeah, it's like, So this kind of helps a little bit. It gives the seller just a little bit of protection.
Does the future usage map help with the proposed thing?
Yeah.
Sometimes.
I mean, it's there.
Suggestion.
It's there for informational purposes. It's aspirational, if you will. Things can change on a dime, that depending on what happens.
There's one about being connected to public water and sewer.
That's important.
The 40-year guy.
Yeah, it can happen, and it is amazing. Sometimes vacant land actually has a well on it.
Oh, sure.
And so this. Or yes, or an abandoned septic tank. It could have been a house. It could have had a house on it. That's no longer. That's now vacant land, and we've seen a lot of that everywhere since the hurricane. So this is something I would not hesitate to ask my seller to fill out. I mean, if they balk and choke, I would just simply write, make a note. Seller refused to fill out. But then you remind them, if you don't fill it out, what you're basically saying is, everything is fine and wonderful and hunky-dory. We're talking about, who was talking about New Orleans? People get buried and it goes down into the ground
The
and
titles are always.
stuff, and it gets all weirded out. Yeah.
The titles are like, nobody really buys the house, they just kind of toss it from one
Yeah,
to the
you
other.
know, did you bury your dog on the property? Did you bury grandma on the property? You know, in the old days, people used to do that stuff. So you never know. So that's a really good disclosure to use. And just tell them fun stories. You know, customers always relate when there's fun stories. These we are aware of. The condominium one and the residential one. The condo is much easier. It's smaller because there's common area as opposed to owned by the individual. But it's important for the seller and it's important for our buyer to have something in writing that gave everyone the thought process of what's actually going on in the property that they're selling or buying. And down the road, if anything ever happens within the 7-year period after someone buys and sells, it's always about something that went wrong with the property. We went remodeling and we found out that house had caught on fire. And nobody ever told us that there were burned timbers inside underneath the drywall and all of that. And the first thing they do is, was there a home inspection done? Was there a termite inspection done? We look for those disclosures. We look for that in the app files. And was there a disclosure by the seller? This saves the seller's butt. It will save our butt. Or if they lie, it pushes it off of us and puts it onto the seller. Which does bring up a point. All of these disclosures, including these, do not fill out for the customer. They need to do it in their handwriting or on their computer, do it and sign it. You can guide them through it. Like when you go on a listing appointment, this is a pretty hefty form. You know, you can leave it there and say, I'll come back in a couple of days, you know, when I come back to do the photos of the house or something like that, and then look at it. But it just makes you look, again, it's all about looking more professional, being special, having value. There's 10,000 members in our association. I mean, we all play well together, but at the end, I'd like to win the listing. I don't want to give it to somebody else. So if I can show that I have more value, I think this is a really, really, really good way to do it.
An example where item C, there 1C, they had checked off that yes, everything is totally fine. And during the inspection, the windows, there was 4 incapacitated windows, $1 million property. And basically the seals had all broken. So basically they were non-functional and there was some mechanical problems with the windows themselves. The seller said, well, I'm not going to do a damn thing. The listing agent says, well, I'm not either. I said, well, yeah, you have to.
We have to disclose it.
You got to disclose it. So we refused to. I said, all right, fine. And we ended up negotiating out some money's back and we're going to repair it and everything was deal. But they were not very pleasant to work with. I think you probably recall that one.
Yes, I do.
It's like, really? Seriously? You knew they were broken. You said they weren't, but, the inspection says, hey, you got to replace these windows. So we ended up coughing a few grand up on each side and get it fixed. Right?
Yeah.
So
That's
sometimes
it.
you got to do it to make the deal, right?
And
you
if
want to lose a deal
no,
over 4 windows where, look, okay, I'll give you a little bit back. $1 million property, 3% is pretty common, right? So,
yeah, you do what you got to do, But but that is a good point. If the sellers know something and they go, shush, don't tell.
right.
What's the first thing you do? Say goodbye. Goodbye. I like my license. I like, they're never worth it. But Barbara's talking about, they've got the water intrusion and the drainage and the flooding. That's where you need to disclose. And a lot of them have questions about this stuff because it does. I mean, you've got plumbing. Did I have a little plumbing? Did my faucet leak and I replaced the faucet, or did my bathroom flood? Those kinds of things. And they can write all over the place. They can put addendums and all kinds of stuff.
This brings up recently with the water intrusion based on where I live, right?
Mm-hmm.
That there's been a lot of questions around, well, okay, that's great. It's been remediated, restored. Was it permitted? So just maybe for the folks that are dealing with that, you may want to look up on the permitting site to see if that contractor came in that did the remediation and restoration actually put permits in there in order to bring the property back to usable property, right? That's come up in a lot of my deals, actually.
And that's when you ask the seller. Oh, where did I lose? Oh.
Yeah, I just look it up just to be sure. Sometimes they don't.
Yes, but you want to be the source of the source.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the person responsible for that. Yes. So yeah, make sure they have that. What other question? There was the pools we've got in there. We don't really have sinkholes in here, thank God, but we could. Northern Florida is known for sinkholes. So that's in there. They do add a little bit stuff about homeowners in here as well, if you've noticed. That's on page 3 of the disclosure. If there's restriction, boundaries, access roads, subsurface rights, encroachments. A lot of the encroachments have to do with sprinkler systems. Because if you've got 0 lot line homes and the association has the sprinkler system in there, and it might be on quote unquote your property, not common property, that could cause a problem sometimes. So better to disclose. If they don't know. Environmental, it still touches on the lead-based paint as well. This doesn't negate the disclosure requirement, but it's just another layer to remind them.
I know you
that
want
they
us
need
to
it.
always be source of the source.
Yes.
However, when you're dealing with associations, there's always, the sellers don't necessarily know what's going on from the association perspective, especially in that section, right, section 7.
Mm-hmm.
I still go to the association management company to see if there's anything outstanding, because sometimes, again, it's in between. And the association management company would know more than, say, the selling agent, because those are the ones I work with don't know. And the homeowners don't know. Yeah, we've heard that they're going to change the irrigation system out, but we haven't heard anything concrete yet. We don't know if this is going to be an assessment associated with it. So I call anyways just to be sure.
And that's okay.
I don't like going to my buyers and saying, well, if you call these guys, they'll be able to help you out.
Yeah. Well, once they give you some information, if it's
Then
important, then say, could you email it to me?
Yes.
Could you do something? And then and say to the seller, I talked to the association. It's ultimately your responsibility. Make sure you cover your butt, because you don't want to say to the buyer, I called the association and they said that there's going to be a $20,000 assessment, and then guess it doesn't happen. Now the buyer is going to go after, I could have bought my dream condo, but Tim told me there was going to be a $20,000 assessment. They always remember who told them. And that's when they remember our name. They remember it then. 85% of them love us, right? And they want to go use us again, but then can they remember our name? No, but you do something wrong. Man, do they remember your name? This is, there you go. At AppFile, yes. This is insurers where everybody knows your name. Absolutely. There's all kinds of stuff. Governmental claims on the property, things like that. All of this stuff is in a historic district. That can be really interesting. And of course, it has little FERPTA again on there. This is super, super, super important, and that's why it's a Jones & Company Realty policy that the sellers fill it out. If they refuse, that's what you note in the file. Follow up with an email to them. Yes, you're telling me that you're not going to fill this form out, that there is absolutely nothing wrong with this property. And that's how we're going to market it.
So this is what don't know means, because
Don't know means I don't know squat. Like, I inherited the property.
I've sold houses like this. It's like that, like some serious stuff was, and the owner's like, don't know. It turned out it had termites, and he was paying a termite, a pest guy for the termites for like 7 years.
Okay, well, that was a
They came up
lie.
with the bill, so
That was
we
a
didn't
seller
know.
misrepresenting.
Yes, it was.
And the good part for you was that you had this paperwork that said he didn't know, and he did know. That's an extra layer of protection. That's an awesome, awesome idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because
So I was like, God,
people fix termite stuff, and then
no.
they forget.
Dr. Diaz bought the house. He fixed everything.
It was
He got like $350,000.
It was fixed. Why should I tell them? I fixed it. Why should I tell them? Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. All right.
We ran into an issue with values of properties dropping a bit because people wanted to sell when they were opening that landfill after Ian. And then there's talking putting in a recycling plant near there. So those are external, but they're close enough where it's affecting, I would assume, we're supposed to dispose of.
If it's been out there, like if there's been conversations about it, like in the newspapers or social media or something, then it's out there, and there's an extra layer that you're okay with it. I mean, you still should talk about it, but it's public knowledge. If it's just whispers and rumors and backyard things, I would stay far away from that. Even if you were a single agent, and we aren't, we operate as transaction brokers, you want to be really careful because people can start false rumors just to affect values. Unscrupulous people who end up in New Jersey in a kayak or without a paddle at night because they did things wrong. That's an old story. That's an old story. That's okay. I heard he really didn't expire. That somebody saw him in Texas. But it's like Elvis. He was probably seen having coffee with Elvis. But yeah, all you can do is direct them. If somebody's that nervous or that curious, say, okay, if you're hearing about a landfill, go to the county and go ask. Call your councilman and ask. Because the last thing you want to do is, I called the councilman and he told me blah, blah, blah. And, not all councilmen are scrupulous either.
I tell them you got mountain views now.
You have mountain views.
There's no mountains in Florida, they're landfills.
Hey.
I don't know how many times people.
And Marco Island is a coral reef.
Insisted that
Or,
somebody sold them a Gulf access lot, and I'm looking and it's not Gulf access.
Yeah, that's in there. That's in the disclosures. Look at that. And it is amazing. Some people, when they first started Cape Coral, that's what they did. They kind of fibbed. They told all kinds of stories. There's a book, Lies That Came True. So, and that's always fun to give as a present. One more disclosure. And I know that 99% of you don't use it, and that's why we're teaching about it. The energy efficiency brochure. This came out back in the early 90s originally, and I think this version is from 2013. All it is, it's a federal law. They don't have to sign anything on this. It's just a little brochure that you can email, and it simply says, if you buy a house, here's ways you can save money on energy. It's a hot topic. Our little area of the world doesn't seem to be very concerned about energy efficiency and green and things like that. But if you go up towards Sarasota, Manatee, green and energy efficiency is super, super important to them. So they'll be looking for this. So you're just gonna include that in your packet with them. Let them know. Now, how do you prove that you gave it to them? Do you remember the contracts? There's a whole page and a half of disclosures on the fire bar. Did you know? I'll get into that, yeah. So some of it's already in there, but page 4, it's of 13, the disclosures, number 10. The first one is radon gas. Radon gas isn't as popular as it was a few years ago. Think dinosaur bones. That's how I usually relay it to the customer. But they've reduced it into the contract. It used to be a separate disclosure. Now it's part of there. The permits disclosure gets a little bit dicier because it says, except where have been disclosed in a written disclosure, seller does not know of any improvements made to the property made without required permits. That's kind of an important little one. They reduced it to mold. They've got mold down here into a 2-line thing instead of a separate disclosure, which is nice. When we were talking about water and flood, they bring in flood zone elevation certificates, right? Because the seller has to know what he's in. And if he doesn't, that's baloney sausage. Every seller knows whether he's in a special hazard flood zone area or any of that kind of stuff. So this talks about flood insurance. Did anybody ever read this? Okay, that's important. The energy brochure is there on E. Then lead-based paint, all these things that we've added and we're putting in. Homeowners disclosure, big bold wording. Don't sign this contract unless you've received your homeowners association disclosure. It's telling them that. Property tax disclosure is included in here as well, that they shouldn't rely upon what they read. FERPTA is in there. There are extra addendums and things, but FERPTA is in here already. So why add extra stuff if it's already in the contract? And then the biggie is the seller's disclosure. Seller knows of no facts materially affecting the value of the real property which are not readily observable and which have not been disclosed to the buyer. So it's extra again. The seller is disclosing. All of that's in that 13-page contract that usually you just kind of slide through most of this. But it's super, super important for you. Are you feeling overwhelmed with disclosures? I'm going to give you one more.
Only when they don't read it. They know.
And that's where you want to point out things in particular to them that are in there. And a lot of them have questions about things too. When you're doing your buyer consultation, it's often a really good idea to go over the contract that they're going to sign when they find the property, so you can cover all these different things that they're going to ask about. So they're already aware that you are in the loop on it. You're on top of things like surveys and open permits and things like that. It's selling your value and showing what you can do. So if you have, my famous thing is put the FARBAR contract in the bathroom. You know, that's one place I know you can sit in quiet and peace, take your contract, read it in the restroom. Okay. One more disclosure.
One more.
Just one more. But wait, there's more. This is a buyer's disclosure. So when you have your buyer, this is a Jones & Company Realty form. It's always ever changing, and we're always open to suggestions because you're going to hear questions from buyers consistently, and that's what we use this for. The buyer's disclosure lets them know about closing costs and things like that. It's not part of the contract that they're going to sign. It's giving them that notice up front before. It talks about assessment possibilities. This says specifically the city of Cape Coral, but there are other parts of Lee County that do put assessments in. San Carlos has had road assessments. You know, some places now are starting with sidewalk assessments, anything that the city might. That buyer's closing costs also has our compensation of $400 in there. A lot of the title companies will ask, where's the paperwork that says you're getting paid the $400? So you can send that over to them. We've added zoning and governmental action under here so that they know, and we try to give them phone numbers and stuff. Here, go find out if you're curious. Vacant land, again, the same thing. What you can do, what you can't do. We just had something the other day about burrowing owls. There's a lot in my neighborhood. It has 3 burrowing owls nests on it, and Miranda Homes put a sign on it. Yeah, they said, "Oh, we can build on this lot for you," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, okay." Not immediately. We're in nesting season, right? But people coming from different areas don't know about scrub jays or bald eagles and stuff. What makes our environment so fun and exciting here can also cause little oops when you go to build, you know.
On the, what's it called, GS, whatever, Cape Coral, GIS, there's a tab, property restrictions. You're gonna get your owls and eagles and turtles and whatever the heck else is going on. And you have it right there, so usually I print it off and I have them sign it.
Yeah, and you know, animals move.
Well, of course.
They move in and they move out and all of that. So if there's any concerns at all, my first resource would be Florida Wildlife Commission.
Yeah.
They will come out for free. They'll come out, they'll look, they'll identify, they'll tag, and that's how it gets into the GIS. Like I had a turtle who lived behind me, and this builder kept wanting to try to build in there. Well, that either has to be relocated or what. You can't just kill them.
No.
And they like to. And they were being bad. They were being out there being bad, you know, and I don't, you know, no, I don't understand what you're saying. I called the Florida Fish and Wildlife when the uniformed policeman, all of a sudden they understood that they couldn't mess with the turtle. So.
The turtles aren't bad because you can just pen
I
them
love
and structure.
turtles, and they can be relocated.
Really cool.
Owls
Really
can't.
happy.
Yeah,
This
owls
is a
don't
bunch.
relocate while they're nesting,
No.
but you
But
can.
more people are putting them on, are trying to get the nest on the front yard, and I really love that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes us cool here. We got all,
Jeremy's house, they have
we got like-
a nest in the front yard, and they like it.
and I love that. Yeah,
The eagles are 45 years.
they've got, if they're in that 350 feet of the nest, you aren't moving for, I think the nest has to be abandoned like 5 years, I think. And then then you can go out 750 feet and then like to 1,000 feet because for their flight and all of that kind of stuff. So you can build at different times. There's a lot of information. I've got a lot of that information in app files.
Just stay away from the eagles.
They're really cool. They're really cool, but you got to know, and it could affect your customer not being able to buy. And if you've got somebody who's buying land that has buying just because they want to buy land and they haven't come down here and they haven't looked at it, I would at least go look at it.
Yeah.
Take a photo,
Yeah. Take photos.
a video or something like that, because we did have an agent who sold a lot and it was right within that 350 feet of the eagle. They should have never sold it, but it was too close and he couldn't build on it. Guess who bought the lot back? The agent bought a lot.
You can't build on it.
Because he said, oh no, you can build on it, blah, blah, blah.
I was just up in Ocala this week, and there's a place called Top of the World.
Mm-hmm.
And they showed me a house that butts up against the protected area for eagles. There's signs all over. And they said that even if the eagle abandons the nest where it appears to be, you gotta wait so many years.
5 years.
Yeah,
5 years.
So there's a whole big section that they just love to see that eagle leave, because they could build probably another 50 or 100 homes.
Yeah. And those were there, love to see it.
But you can move turtles, right?
You can move. With
Somebody.
following procedures, turtles can be relocated. Because turtles stay within a very small habitat, and they generally stay there for their whole lives. So they don't get too traumatized if you relocate them.
What about
I don't know, did we answer?
Scrub jays,
That's Charlotte County thing.
they are coming into Lee County.
Yeah.
They come. Once they're there, they're protected.
It's not for them.
They're harder to, and because they're low-lying birds, they go in the bushes. So yeah, be careful. That it's all fun with that kind of stuff. There's wetlands in here. Wetlands we are very much affected by wetlands, and we don't even realize it. A lot of North Fort Myers is in wetland area. If you go along Daniels Parkway, we have was it Calusa, the whole slough. There's Cypress, the whole cypressing. There's a whole, the Cypress slough. That's all in there. I mean, places you wouldn't think have wetlands. I mean, New Jersey has wetlands.
A lot of wetlands.
A lot of wetlands are in New Jersey and stuff. So so you have to, you just disclose it. Don't be the expert. Don't go, I'll look at the survey and tell you if it's in a wetlands. If you really, really, really want to know, call the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. Here's their number. That's the best thing to do with that, because you can really go down a slippery slope. And common knowledge to most people is, if it's wetlands, I can't build on it. Yes, you can. In your area, you might have part of your land that can't be built on, and you can get some tax benefits, or you can negotiate out and you can mitigate wetlands, and you can do all kinds of things. That's how FGCU got built where they were at. They mitigated part of that land off of tree line. Yeah, it's amazing what you can do with money.
Try 5 acres and you can build right there.
You can build right there. And don't think you can't, because they have airplanes that come and catch you. They will catch you. Docks and seawalls. And you got to be careful with that too. Army Corps of Engineers controls it. They really control the waterway, so they control the permits for any kind of a dock, any kind of a lift, things like that. Has anybody had any issues with them?
Well, people thinking that they can remove their own mangroves and
Well,
in the cave with that.
Oh, there you
No,
go.
You can't do that.
Yeah. Well, and you're not required right now.
When all the seawalls collapse.
And are they covered under insurance?
No.
That's the other thing.
Yeah, 40 grand, 60
Everybody
grand.
assumes they're covered. They could be, but you might have to buy another policy.
Because it's too late and you're not, and it's collapsed.
So that's part of us when we're selling paradise.
$20,000 to $40,000 overnight.
Lands, fish, those noisy fish down in the canals. Is it a drumfish
Yeah.
that makes the noise? The drumfish, And home inspections, again, we recommend you have a home inspection. I mean, this is just like a catch-all of stuff.
You have the fish in here?
No, you can put the fish in there. No, they're not protected. School choice, we still have school choice in the state of Florida, in Lee County, right? Collier County. Escrow funds, it talks, we let them know we don't hold money. We don't hold it. Again, it's all about giving them places to go and find out. Be the source of the source, right? Go to government fraud. You were talking about wire fraud and things like that. That's why we don't hold money.
Right.
That is specifically why we do not hold money, is because there's too much fraud in there. We don't forward the letter from the title company with the wiring instructions. Stay out of it. Stay out of it. That's the best thing to do. The only wiring instructions you want to give the title company is our bank accounts if they're going to wire the commission directly to us / compensation, or give them your instructions if you want it wired into your own bank account. But don't take it from the buyer or the seller, and don't take that responsibility for them. You can drive them to the title company if they're too old to do it. I've done that.
The title company will go to somebody who's enabled.
Yeah, or put them on the phone with the title company. You write this down, and they get them on a speaker, and you can be checking for them to help them. But don't, but ultimately it's them, and it's their handwriting, and stay out of it. Stay out of it. I want you to keep more money in your pocket than be paying out for everybody else. Yeah, homeowners associations, again, it's just little tiny tidbit things. This is really good to send before you even do anything else with them. Just, our little area of the world is weird. We have wetlands, we have protected species, we have all this stuff, and this will tell you a little bit about what you're going to look at when you're coming down to buy. I'd rather them know up front what they're going to buy than come down here and you spend all your time, energy, and money, and then they go, oh my God, this is too much. Like the Wild Wild West. Reminds them about real estate taxes. It's amazing how many people don't think they have to pay for taxes or homestead exemptions and things like that. Ignorance is no excuse when it comes to property taxes. And we hear that from Europeans all the time.
Locals too, they have a house built. Oh, I had no idea. They're paying the first year was like $400, then it goes up to like $6,000, and they're shocked.
Or they're gone and they don't get their tax bill, and they don't pay it. Right. And then in May the tax certificate was sold. It is truly amazing. And you go up there and try to beg forgiveness. Or I was in a coma for 2 years. Ignorance is no excuse.
I mean, you can look it up online, for crying out loud. It's not like a secret.
Again, so this is your job. Just maybe defective drywall is still there. It very rarely rears its ugly little head, but it could. We had a woman that we sold the house to. She went to go sell it 7 years later, and the buyer discovered defective drywall, and so she thought it was our fault.
Yeah, of course.
Needless to say, documentation, COA, we didn't have a problem. But but you never know, so let them know about it. Sexual predators, we stay out of that as well. Go to the website, contact the police. It's amazing because people really do depend on us for that. It's amazing. And maybe you're a predator and you're there today, but you might sell your condo, you might move away, or maybe you move in and then he moves in.
Absolutely.
We have no control over that. We just don't. And that's all you can do. Also the last one is video audio surveillance. It just lets them know that they probably will be filmed. Just be aware of it. They could be doing audio even though they're not supposed to, but just don't say anything in the house. That could harm your negotiating position. That would be the easiest way, I'd say, to have it in there. But this is, so if there's something else we're missing, let us know. If there's new things we need to put in, or if things are too redundant that shouldn't be in here, we can always take them out, because we don't want you to look like you're just old school and you don't know what you're doing, or you're beating a dead horse, all of that.
Should there be anything in here about the buyer's agreement?
That's probably really good.
'Cause
idea.
This is a piece that I do with my buyers meetings,
Mm-hmm.
and they get it well before we start looking, just so that they have time to review, but maybe another layer of the buyer's agreement from the brokerage, which is basically
Yeah.
how this is presented. You know, anytime we can continue to tell them, yes, this is the way it's gonna be.
Yeah. No, I like that idea. I think we'll put a paragraph in there that talks about compensation, and yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I know, we have to clarify it, or not clarify it, because it's very money anyway. And sellers, for the most part, still pay.
Yeah, they get it. But buyers who want to go and wholesale buy and, do that kind of stuff, say, sure. But, let's talk about you just paying me to do that for you.
Yeah.
And you don't have to get paid just percentages. You can get paid fees. You can actually get paid for what you do. If if they want an analysis, broker's opinion of some properties and stuff, they can pay you X number of dollars just for doing that service for them.
They want you to write low goals all
The only thing, yes. Well, and I used to do that with customers. Yeah, if that's what they wanted to do, I'd say, okay, I will charge you $500 for every contract and every offer that I have to present. And should you successfully get this idiotic offer accepted, I will refund you back on that deal, which isn't a bad idea. The one thing we cannot do when we're talking about charging for our services, we cannot charge them for writing contracts. That is a legal thing that lawyers do. We fill in the blanks. We don't write contracts, so we never want to send them an invoice for contract writing. However you want to write it, we don't do that. We can bill them for consultations, we can bill them for presentations, but we cannot charge them for actually writing a contract because we are not attorneys.
So you can word it, I'm charging you this for presenting an offer.
Yes.
Simple.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Contractual
consultation. We can get creative. Anything you do obviously gets billed through Jones & Company Realty, and then don't let them write you a check. Fastest way to lose your license. We had a customer who was so happy with one of our agents, they sent them a $500 check as a bonus directly to the agent. We can't do that.
What did you do? You send it back, right?
Well, we had the conversation. Do you want to send it back to them and ask them to rewrite it, or do you want to just send it back to them, or how do you want to handle that? But yeah, that would be the fastest way to lose your license, would have been to cash that check.
I would say usually when I get a bonus, they pay in cash.
Yeah.
We're on film.
Or my nutty client Eli, he owed me the commission or whatever, and he sent it PayPal to me. So I just turned it over.
If customers do that,
Because he's
and sometimes people get vindictive and they try to get us in trouble too. So if it feels funny, if it smells funny, call me up. We'll figure it out. Yeah. So-and-so said this. Can we really do that? And it is amazing what they come up with. It's like, can I give them money outside of closing to cover this repair and all that kind of stuff? I mean, we hear it all the time, right? They slip envelopes back and forth. If you're not touching that envelope, that's between those people. Don't make deals. It's like, I'm going to pay $300,000 for this house on a contract, but I'm going to slide you a check for $50,000 under the table. And if you know about that, that's when you call, because that's how you get in trouble. That's how you lose your license.
I can save on my property tax. I had that once.
Yeah, so the value is less.
It's so funny.
Well, we do it in my old country. Why can't we do it here in the United States? So, and that's where zoning is really important, because it is funny. And we had that happen. One of our customers bought a big chunk of vacant land and decided that they wanted to dig a lake there. So they did. Well, you can't do that in the United States. You can't just dig a hole on your property that's going to sustain water. They the airplane came over and saw this lake, and they went right after him and said, you didn't get that permitted, it wasn't approved, blah, blah, blah. He got fined like $60,000 by the federal government because it was interfering with the sheet flow of all of this stuff. So different countries are very, very lax with those kind of rules, but the United States
on the
really
terrain
isn't.
as well.
Yeah,
Florida is-
Colorado, you can't have a rain barrel
Right. Which is,
because they're a plateau and they want all the water to go in. Now here, right now, which kind of surprises me because we're in a drought, that they were teaching about rain barrels down by the
been prepared for it.
down by the
And I have one.
the nature center in Cape Coral. Yeah, Rotary Park. Yeah, they were teaching how to use rain barrels, which are kind of cool.
Yeah, I have one.
And in
But
rainy
I have
season they're
one,
good, but in drought,
I have a water filtration system, even though I'm at city water, and it dumps like 50 gallons like every month or so. So I put that in the rain barrel.
well, that
I
makes
waste it.
well. There you go. That's sound conservative
Yeah.
kinds of things.
And I use the water.
So that's it for our disclosures. And I bet you thought it was going to be a boring class, but lots of fun for that. And we've got one more for the month of May coming up next Thursday. And I'm not quite sure what it is, but it will be exciting no matter what. So we hope you can come in person because it's much more fun in person. So as we always say at Jones & Company Realty, peace out.